R6D diesel. So this morning we are under a Volkswagen lt158. I think I'll do a bit of a lead in, which you'll have seen already. But basically, this is customer's vehicle with a damaged engine gear set. So to get to the engine gear set, I have to take that lot out. Not particularly difficult, but obviously almost the same procedure as if you were going to change clutch on one. So this is a 2.8 158, but it is pretty much the same procedure in the beginning of this for changing the clutch on a 2.5 lt35 5-cylinder one, same on a 2.8, and pretty much the same for the Mercedes range, the earlier ones. So we'll show you how to do that, show you how to get the gearbox out first, what bolts you need, where to undo things, blah 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 blah, and then I'll have to then I'm on to gears, but you get the rough idea of it. Right, Monday morning, I'm definitely going to need a cup of coffee first, and then we'll get removing all this lot. So 158 gearbox removal, fairly simple procedure. Use a slightly bad lighting, but we are in a pit underneath a truck. So, there's my torch. So they're held on basically with a ring of, they are 16mm bolts on a 2.8, or 16mm headed bolts on a 2.8. So ring all the way around, you see them up there, and need to unscrew. You can see it terribly well, that collar there screws back, sensor pulls off. Then back up here, gearbox speed sensor, which has got little 10mm bolts on the inside of it there, and then that pulls out. Clutch slave cylinder is dead easy, as you'll see, 2 30mm bolts, and they're poked in there. And then basically, best bet is to undo the 2 30mm bolts, pull the cylinder back, keep the, we know it's a dog's dick, but keep that bit with it. And I just tend to literally tuck him up out the way on top of the chassis right up there, so fits nicely up in there out the way, and then you don't have to worry about it. You've got up in the top there, you've got an engine earth strap. See it just here. Engine earth strap just there, look. So that is on a 16mm bolt, but it's actually got a 30mm headed clamp on it, nut on it. So you take that off. And same again, you can do the same with that. I just tend to tuck it up behind all the fuel pipe in there out the way. You need obviously to get inside the vehicle, just lift the gearbox, the gear lever surround, and you'll find another 16mm bolt that clamps the gear lever in. I'll show you that in a minute. Pretty simple. You've got 4 15mm bolts that remove the prop shaft. Now you will, to get enough room, need to drop, or I always do, to get enough to get the gearbox back, pull these 18s here and drop this prop separator. This is a long wheelbase, so I should have enough by pulling. What I do is undo these two, so that this lets this unit down, this centre bearing down, and then that's the escape ring there, like the one to stop it from whirling around if it ever one of the UJ's breaks. Undo that last, and then you can actually stand here, hold on to this prop shaft, drop it down, and sort of try and swing it out your way. I normally find, luckily enough, we're in a pit, so I just tuck them over there and sit them on the side. You've got a gearbox cross member on the back, that's fairly easy. So you've got one big 18mm bolt, or 18mm nut, sorry, in the middle. Take that out and take the washer out from underneath it. And then once you've got this gearbox supported under here with something, I mean, if you're on the set of axle stands, you do it with the trolley jack. We'll be using a gearbox jack, obviously, because we're stood in a pit. And then what I tend to do, they're 2 16mm bolts, one there, and the same on the other side, and then remove this cross member, clean out the way, and then basically a bit of jiggling and the gearbox will come back to you. It's a very, very similar thing for a 2.5 LT if you've got a 5-cylinder one. Only difference is, I think the bolts on, I'm sure the 2.5's got 80mm bolts around the gearbox, but basically exactly the same process, and funnily enough, same process, 2.9 or 308D 310 TM1 Sprinter, TM1 Sprinter, similar for a Mark II, but obviously there's some differences because they've got cable gear selection on them. I'm going to put this back on some more time lapse, and I will get woggling. And what we'll do in a minute, or what I'll do in a minute, is pop back up the top, show how to take the gear lever out, and we'll slide this gearbox back which then gives me access into here, and I'll show you how to remove a dual mass flywheel, a clutch and a dual mass flywheel, and then it gives you a rough idea what you need to do if you're changing one. And then basically we are into the gearbox engine pack, gearbox gear pack. Sorry, Monday morning first thing. Gearbox gear pack on the back, and see what sort of damage she's done. Right, so next bit, gear lever removal. So, I'll spin this round, up in the cab. So this is the same for an early Sprinter or an LT. You've got big black rubber gear lever gator. If you get hold of that, give it a bit of a tug. I'll take folding the thing back on it, so it works fairly well. Then it's out of your way. The gear lever out of the way, and then you've got like this rubber sound deadener in the middle, and you'll see in there is 16mm bolt. So I'm going to use the high-speed 16mm bolt removal tool. So bolt out. There's a washer on the bottom of it normally. I have to remember to take that out as well. And what you tend to find is that then the gear lever doesn't just fall off, so get it in gear, it's sort of freezing, and then it'll come loose. And it's got a tapered end on it, so just put that to one side, and you've got like a little plastic thingy that goes on top, so just pop that out, and then you are top of the gearbox and free to go. So, gearbox cross member is out. Spin round, you can see, let's say, the prop shaft. This is long wheelbase. It will lie down long enough to tuck it over here in a minute, but I've got my gear there at the moment. So, two 18mm, 18mm bolts, one there. Do watch this one because it is tucked in beside this fuel tank quite tightly. Also, when putting them back in, they are really, really easy to cross thread, so just go careful. Once you've done it so sensibly. So obviously the big rear gearbox mount bolt is unbolted there. These are the two the 16mm nuts on them that hold the cross member in. So what we're going to go for now is this gearbox, in theory, is pretty much ready to fall out. Let's bring the light a little bit further forwards. So on a 2.5, if you're just doing the clutch, what I tend to do is just put a little bit of a 2x2 batten in between here when I sit the sump down on the top of the front suspension cross member. Makes it easy to get the gearbox in and out. This thing has got to come massively apart, not obviously it's a 2.8, but the sump's got to come off because there's going to be loads of bits of metal from those gears in that we want to make sure that don't go through an engine. Right, so this part of this box has been on there a while because the dowels are quite sticky, as you can see. They are monstrous and heavy. This is Tom drags a welding trolley past it again. But just go careful because if it does decide to come off and land on you and flat pack you, it's not the most pleasant of experiences. And there she goes. Obviously the clutch and the dual mass, which is quite flappy but not horrific. And then I say big ring of bolts. Take the spacer out, and then another big, further back here, load of bolts, and then basically the whole gear back out the back. I will get rid of that out of my working space, because to be honest it doesn't need to be sat up there. One question I do get asked all the time: are 2.8 and 2.5 gearboxes the same? There is an answer to this: no, they are not. I mean, this is a Mercedes-Benz gearbox. I think the other ones are Daimler-Benz, but they are different. The gear selector on a 2.8 sits much further forwards, and the main thing that is different is this on here. That is Mercedes OM pattern, and a 2.5 TDI gearbox is not. So don't go buying a 2.5 TDI gearbox to go in your LT to 2.8, because it won't fit. You can buy 2.9 Sprinter, is the same. Obviously all the 2.8s I think through with the same. The gearing changes in the back axles, not in the gearboxes. Anyway, I'll stop waffling. I'll go and I'll do a little bit of video. I'll wedge in a sec, show you the difference between the two side by side. But I'm going to concentrate on getting this lifted off of here without hurting myself, and then we'll get back on time lapse, and we'll get this clutch and all this gear pack ripped out. 2.5 and 2.8 gearboxes. That one there, LT 2.8. That one there, 2.5. As you can see, they are vastly different. If you go to the front, you'll see starter motors hang on the other side on a TDI 2.5 TDI, on the opposite side on a 2.8, and the gearbox pattern, the bell housing pattern, is totally different. So don't buy a 2.5 one and try and fit it to your 2.8, or a 2.8 one and try and fit it to your 2.5, because you'll be massively disappointed. So clutch is off. Well, down to a dual mass, and LTs have got these big female torque head bolts that go massively through, because this flywheel is sat well off the back of the crank because of all this spacer stuff. So what you need, take me half an hour to find them, is these little beggars. So you need a set of decent big female torques to get in here to get these undone. Don't try it with anything cheap and rubbish, because all you'll do is take the teeth out of that, and then you'll be here for ages trying to get it off. So spend the money. They're not expensive. I mean, these are only US Pro ones. They're ardent, and I reckon they were about 15 quid the set. So if you're doing this job, you need to change dual mass flywheel. Remember to order these in advance, because you'll get this point and go, oh nuts, I haven't got one that big. Well, one of these that big, if you know what I mean. Right, so the dual mass flywheel is out on the floor. Obviously there's like a spacer ring on the back of a 2.8. I whip that off first. It's only on those little torque bolts. So sometimes it's easier to take that off the back first, and then you can lock the flywheel with a bar up against the top corner here. so you can get the big bolts in the middle undone because they're normally hideously tight. So what I'm going to do now is take all of these 16s out, which will release this whole rear plate of a gearbox, not gearbox, the rear plate back of an engine. So behind this, in here, obviously you've got your rear main seal, which actually seals around a spacer on the back of the flywheel, and then this whole plate will come out, and we'll see what it looks like in there. It's going to be a little bit of a mess, hopefully not too bad, and then we're going to have to try and we'll time it up. We'll see how far out of time it is. I've got these gears, and I'm going to have the sump off and go chasing for bits of metal because there's bound to be some in there. But right, here goes. Right, so that's the back case unbolted and hanging off, as you can see. I can also already see a large amount of nastiness in there, so we'll try and get the back case off a minute. Let's get the back. Right, so back case removed, and as you can see, I think the drive spindle that does the drive gear that does what would be the power steering pump and the vacuum pump has definitely had it. All the rest of them at current don't look too bad, but I think we're going to need to get here and pop this off to have a look to the damage to the gear behind it. It is on the end of the crank, but as you can see, there's some fairly exciting stuff in there. That's quite a lot of bits of teeth and nastiness fell out. So anyway, choice of being a motor mechanic, and I reckon there's no reason why this engine isn't savable. So I'm going to see if I can undo this reader off the back of the crankshaft a minute, and then we'll see if the crank gear has survived. It's possible the crank gear could be extracted with the engine in the truck, and if it is damaged, and I've got all of these, so I've checked through for teeth and timing marks, and I definitely think that poor little beggar there, he has had it. I mean, look at that. And his appearance is obviously doing no description of driving, because that shouldn't be linked to this gear down here. Anyway, right. So I think we'll call this fella super lucky. I think the reason she didn't want to start any sense, if you can see that there, that's the crankshaft sensor on a 2.8 LT 158, and that appears to have half ton of metal stuck to it, obviously because it's a magnetic sensor. But if you look at this, I mean, it's obviously a hardened steel wheel, a hardened steel gear wheel, sorry, appears to have survived unscathed, as do the rest of them. So we're going to run all these timing marks up to pin. You can see the little dots there, so it's a bit difficult because we're in the pit. I've got this idler and a proper VAG original pump, which I'm going to throw in it. But obviously, I mean, due to this amount of metal filings, my next job is to take the sump off. I'll take the sump off, put a big tray underneath it, and probably pull the rocker cover as well, and see if we can flush this engine through a bit. But on the upside, nice man that owns this, I reckon you're a lucky fella. That's better than I was expecting it to be. So after removing all the backpack, obviously, and checking through it, I reckon this engine, as I said a minute ago, is savable. So as we had lots of stuff in here, I've just whipped all the sump bolts out. They're dead easy. You do need to jack the engine about to get them out. They're all 13mm head. There's a variation of different sizes on the back, 4 different, all the rest are the same. And you've got a couple of banjo bolts and a couple of bits to move. You do need basically to jack the engine up, so we've just got it tricked up on some bolts on the back here to lift the rear so we can get it out. And the sump is dangling off the front. Let me move back a bit, as you can see. So I'm going to have to lean inside and take the oil strainer out to get it to come out the truck without lifting it off of its engine mounts for a minute, but that's fine. And I will show you, if I can get in here, why I've done it. Because you think, oh yeah, it'll be all right, you won't get much goo in there. Well, if you look, where's the camera piece on the camera? It's there. You look down in there, can you see all of that lot? So all that lot's all bits of cog, bits of gear, use the correct terminology, Hemsley. So as a fair bit came plopping out with the oil, there's some more back up the back here as well. So basically, you wouldn't want to do this repair without removing the sump. So we are back on the 0158. So sump all cleaned. We've got a new gasket sat here ready to go. All the faces cleaned up. As much gooch as I can possibly get out of it. So that's all the metal filings and all the bits gone. I've spent the last couple of hours. So we've cleaned. I've had the rocker cover off of it and cleaned the top of the engine right out. There was nothing up the top, to be honest. But just to doubly check, timing is spot on, and we've cleaned any traces of any metal floaty bits out of the bottom end, and the bottom end, as you can see, is in really nice nick. I am currently just about to start removing the rest of this old sump gasket. Back plate's all cleaned, all the gurk and stuff removed off the back of it because it is only silicone sealed, ready to go back on. Gear packs all installed. We've still got this manky steering pump sat in here at the moment, so I'll get rid of that in a bit. I'm going to make sure this face is 125% cleaned. But the gears are replaced. Lucky enough, it didn't do too much damage, and we've removed all of the traces of bits of broken stuff out of all the galleries. We're going to have a really good clean down. I was to say, I'll get this this Duff power steering pump out. Power steering vacuum pump out, and get that removed and chucked away because that's rubbish. And then I'll spend the rest of my afternoon getting the sump back on this thing and the rear plates, so that basically we can start throwing the gearbox back in. Oil and filter are here, pretty much all the parts I now need here. So we'll make sure she's back together, oil tight, and then I would have said, give me half a day, and we'll hopefully we've already fired it up, and then it can go back to the lad that owns it. That's all cleaned. I've been around it with just a quick electric wire brush. Make sure it's absolutely as good as can be. Wash the crankcase out again just to make sure we're free of any description of debris. We have the oil strainer pickup, all nicely cleaned out. It's been in the parts washer for a week soaking. I've got a new compression washer, little red one to go in there, and then some proper. These are paper sump gasket, but I'm going to put a little tiny bit of a decent quality sealant on there, just more to hold the gasket in place because it's quite a juggling act, juggling this and this in at the same time, so that we can get the sump into the truck, then put the oil strainer pickup on, and then put the sump back on. So I'm going to stick back on time lapse again because, to be honest, it wouldn't be terribly interesting to sit here watch me put 40 bolts in. And we'll get the sump back on it, get all these cleaned up. That's the dip tube, and there's a breather for the top of the head breathes back into the sump oil return, breather return, and then basically we'll keep soldering on. As the sump all bolted on, the returns bolted on. Now these sump bolts have a torque setting, which is 30 Newton meters. I mean, nothing serious, nothing ridiculously tight or anything, but I have a feeling it's there for a reason. Don't just murder them up. Obviously it's a aluminium sump against a steel block with a paper gasket in between the two. So we have good old digital torque wrench. I will sit here for 10 minutes, nip them all up to 30 Newton meters, and then after that I will be on to, I've got to remember to put, I will not let myself forget, that there is the crankshaft sensor reader ring. Now I've got another one up there. That one has taken a wee bit of a pasting and I'm not going to take the chance with it. I've got another really nice used one with no marks on it. We're going to fit that back on and not forget to fit that before we put the gearbox back on, because it'll make us look really stupid. And so I'll say quickly whip through, torque these bolts up, and then we are on to, I'm going to change this, as I said earlier on, change this power steering pump out. I'm going to actually use the one that came off the vehicle that the rear gear came from, because they're perfectly meshed and the thing's in really nice nick, so we know we're absolutely dead square. But that should make, because this sump before, all the bolts were loose. I don't know why. I mean, I don't think it had been touched in years, but they hadn't been torqued up properly and it was leaking oil around the outer edges out there. So that should cure one gooey oil leak, and once we've finished we will steam this old girl absolutely to death, make sure she's really clean and tidy under here. And anyway, I shall back on a bit of time lapse again, and I'm going to torque these sump bolts up. So just as a bit of a comparison, guys, this is a genuine original VAG vacuum pump off of a 158. There you go, look. You guys got a cable on it, but that's probably fine. This came off of our 158 that I've just put the bits in now, and this is the top quality. I shan't name any names, but we'll just focus a bit on that. So if you look at the difference between the two, it's not really surprising it all went horribly wrong, is it? Anyway, so we'll get rid of this pile of junk, because I'm not fitting that. I mean, that gear is twice the width of the original one. I mean, look at it. I don't trust the teeth on it. So I think we're going to learn from the previous people's mistake. Give this clean up. Let's go genuine Volkswagen, and we'll find somewhere to throw this load of rubbish like back in that box and go in the skip. Right, back under the big beast. So the rear engine cover, or rear gear cover, is now all fitted. Starter motor is back on, dual mass flywheel. Big bolts in the centre. The correct and right power steering and vacuum pump fitted, all cleaned up, ready to go. The sump, obviously, is back on, all sealed up, new washers, ready to rock and roll. So I'll just quickly clean the spacer ring for the back of the bell housing, so we're going to throw that on quickly, and then clutch plate back on wherever that's disappeared to. That's just the new oil filter sat on top of it, ready to go. We're just waiting for I bought some nice quality long life oil. I'm waiting for that to turn up because that's running slightly late, and then I'm going to give this gearbox a good clean inside the bell housing, make sure everything's nice and lovely and ready to go. And I'm going to throw that back in there. Prop shaft back on, all the bolts back in, and then with some oil and a filter, I reckon this truck should be ready to rock and roll. Obviously you need a power steering fluid, and a good power steering fluid which got up top, good check over, and then hopefully a few bolts, bit of wiring, and which is good to go back to the man that owns it. Right, I'm going to keep bumbling along. I will put this back on time lapse. Right, so that's the clutch plate back on, obviously the clutch and the pressure plate, top quality clutch alignment tool installed, which is basically the cut-off shaft out of a dead gearbox, but that means she's going to be absolutely minty. And the other box should slide straight in, so we'll pull that back afterwards. So I've got to then torque all these bolts up around the outside. This back plate, as you've seen, is now screwed on, so basically once this is on, we've got to set this wiring harness, tie it up here somewhere, because that goes above the gearbox. And then we are ready for slinging the gearbox back in, basically. Get that bolted up, and then before we go much further ahead of putting all the prop shelves back on, what I'm going to do is then I'll start this up. I mean, I could start it now, but we're going to have some fan interference issues and stuff, so it's probably easy to get its rear mounts back on. This wiring harness hooked back up out of the way. The engine earth obviously is off at the moment, and we'll get it sort of pretty much assembled, so just to make sure we're pretty confident that the timing is crack on and that there was no more damage done than the chewed up gears in the back, and obviously all the bits of metal filings, and then and we'll get the dear thing running again. Right, gearbox is on the stand. So, gearbox back in, all bolted up. I am going to fill this thing with oil now, as long as it's turned up, put a new filter on it. And I will leave putting all this back on until we make sure that obviously we're pretty keen and confident that she's alive and she's going to work. But I won't want to take a ton's worth of stuff back off if it doesn't. I'm confident. I know these things, so I've got a few more little bolts to scatter around the place, and then I reckon we are good for an attempted start. Right, 2.8 LT, he said, all back together. In theory, we are all oiled up, all bolted back together, and well, I suppose we sort of know it's going to work, or we hope it is anyway. So here goes. Now, I have disconnected, oh Christ, one of the engine management computer clips, wung it over already, get the oil prime up basically, because I want oil going around the system, and I am pretty confident that it will Full start. Doesn't sound bad. Definitely doesn't sound bad. Right, oil lights out. And turn the lights on. Go and check for loops. Right. Well, one would say that's running pretty smoothly. And there is nothing poofing on the floor of the pit. Scrubs there. But I'm calling that a success. Got a few more bits to put back on it to get it out to go. But I think I call that working. Body power steering. It's the main cause of the problem in the first place. Ooh. We have power steering. Since she's pumping. Back up. I think we'll call that. All lights out. We'll call that a success. I'll let it run up now. We'll put the rest of it back together. A little bit of a miss there, but to be honest, I think she's had fair shot. Might take a while to clear through. Certainly does not sound bad. Sponsor.